Have you ever looked up at the sky at night and seen the giant glowing object? That object is the moon, Earth's only natural satellite. Well, one day, one man looked really closely. That man's name was John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. That's when he got an idea that his country could commit itself to completing a goal. So then he announced that before the end of the 1960s, the United States would send a rocket into space and land a man on the moon.
0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13. The Saturn V building up to 7.6 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
Mission control, here we go.
We choose to go to the moon.
It all started with Sputnik, the world's first artificial satellite launched by the Soviet Union. This started the space race, a competition between the Soviets and the United States. This would prove which country was better in space exploration. The Apollo project started in 1963 after JFK announced that by the end of the 1960s, we would land a man on the moon. Sadly, he never got to see this event happen due to his unfortunate assassination on November 22, 1963. There were many missions in the Apollo project. The project had 6 Earth-orbiting missions: Apollo 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9. All of the Earth-orbiting missions were unmanned except for Apollo 7 and Apollo 9. Apollo 8 was the first to orbit the moon. Apollo 1 would have been a manned mission if it weren't for a tragedy aboard. Apollo 1 was meant to be the first mission in the Apollo program, and the Saturn 1B rocket was supposed to launch on February 21, 1967 to go into Earth orbit. However, the mission suffered a major malfunction during a pre-launch test on January 27, 1967, which caused the cancellation of the mission. It was due to a fire that broke out in the cockpit, killing all 3 astronauts aboard: Gus Grissom, Edward White, and Roger Chaffee, and destroyed the command module. A memorial was made for the Apollo 1 crew in Cape Canaveral, Florida, in dedication to their memory, and so we would never forget them. Apollo 7 was the first mission in the Apollo program after the Apollo 1 tragedy. It was a C-type mission, meaning it was a manned evaluation in Earth orbit. This mission was also the first use of the Block 2 command module. The mission's commander was Walter Schirra. This was his 3rd and final spaceflight. The command module pilot was Don Eisel, and the lunar module pilot was Walter Cunningham. This was the first and only spaceflight for the both of them. The mission was an 11-day Earth orbital mission that launched on October 11, 1968, and landed on October 22, 1968. The Apollo 7 spacecraft is currently being exhibited at the Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas, Texas. Apollo 8 was the second manned mission in the Apollo program. Being the first manned mission to leave Earth orbit, it was also the first mission to orbit the moon, but not land. The mission's commander was Frank Borman, who from this mission was the first of 24 to orbit the moon. The command module pilot was Jim Lovell, who would later be the commander of the Apollo 13. The pilot of the lunar module was astronaut Bill Anders. The mission launched on December 21, 1968, in the first usage of the Saturn V rocket, and landed on December 27th. It was a 3-day journey to the moon, and Apollo 8 orbited 10 times, which took about 19 to 20 hours. The mission showed that man could get to the moon, which would later be proven on Apollo 11. to fulfill JFK's original idea of getting there. Apollo 11 was probably the most important mission in the Apollo project. The spacecraft was launched on July 16, 1969 in a Saturn V rocket at the Kennedy Space Center in Mare Island, Florida. Apollo 11 landed on the moon July 20, 1969 in the Sea of Tranquility. This was the first mission that used the LEM to its purpose, landing on the moon. The commander of Apollo 11 was Neil Armstrong, who would famously become the first man on the lunar surface. The command module pilot was astronaut Michael Collins. The lunar module pilot was Buzz Aldrin, who joined Armstrong on the moon. Apollo 11 landed in the Pacific Ocean on July 24, 1969.
Before leaving the moon, the astronauts left an American flag and a plaque that said, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind."
The plaque had the signatures of all three astronauts and President Richard Nixon. The Apollo 11 spacecraft is currently being exhibited at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
Apollo 11 ended the space race between the Soviets and the United States. This mission made JFK's goal come true.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Apollo 13 would have been the third mission to land on the moon after Apollo 12. It was launched on April 11, 1970 in a Saturn V rocket to land at Fra Maura on the moon, where Apollo 14 would later go. The flight was commanded by Jim Lovell, who was earlier the service module pilot of Apollo 8. The lunar module pilot was Fred Haise, and the service module pilot was supposed to be Ken Mattingly. Unfortunately, Mattingly never got to be on Apollo 13 due to an exposure of German measles, which he never did get. So, as late replacement, he was replaced by Jack Swigert. But, as a fact, Apollo 13 never made it to the moon. 2 days into the mission, Mission Control asked Swigert to turn on the oxygen tank stirring fans. About 9 minutes later, the astronauts heard a loud bang. The number 2 oxygen tank had exploded. After finding out what happened, the astronauts had completely shut down the command module and used the LEM as a sort of lifeboat. Even though they had to face their problems like loss of water, limited power, loss of cabin heat, and having to fix the carbon dioxide removal system, the astronauts safely returned on April 17, 1970. None of the astronauts ever flew into space again. Apollo 14, 15, and 16 were also flights to the moon, but sadly, Apollo 17 was the last one. The mission was also the final manned flight of the Saturn V rocket. It was launched on December 7, 1972, and landed at Taurus-Littrow on the moon. It was the 6th ship to land. The mission's commander was Eugene Cernan. This was his third and final mission. The command module pilot was Ronald Evans, and the lunar module pilot was Harrison Schmitt. This was the first and only mission for the both of them. The mission spent 3 days on lunar surface. That's the longest time in lunar orbit ever recorded. The crew got back on December 19, 1972.
Unfortunately, America lost a very important friend last year. Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, passed away on August 25, 2012 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was 82 years old. We will never forget him and his commitment to our country.
The Eagle has landed.